Cheers.
Cheers.
I have to look like one of these people who's hiding my beverage only because I don't want people to just randomly guess it. So it's so good to see you. I miss you.
I miss you. Thank you so much for having me and putting this on.
Thank you for coming. Well, I really want you to first tell us about your story, because you were a lawyer, and that's why I always like to say ex-lawyer.
Yes.
But I feel like the areas that you excel in terms of being able to help people kind of navigate the difficulties of wanting to make a career change, being unhappy in your job, being unhappy in your current situation, that in and of itself, even without this COVID pandemic, it's such an important part, because we spend so much time doing something, and sometimes we kind of lose track as to whether or not we care. We get stuck into the mindset of, well, it's a job. This is how it's supposed to be, and this and that, whatnot. But I feel like with what's happened in general, my attitude about this pandemic is that it is a reset in a lot of ways. And some of us might not have taken the moment to press pause in our lives and reevaluate everything. And one of them is what we spend the most of our time doing, which is our career, our jobs, how we generate income, and how that doesn't necessarily have to be something you don't enjoy doing. So I'm just going to pass this along to you and just tell us everything you know, and I'm going to sit here and enjoy my cocktail and listen to you.
Sounds good. So yes, hello everybody. I like to say I'm a recovering attorney. I used to be a lawyer for a number of years. I practiced both civil and criminal defense. And I think, like a lot of lawyers, not all, as we know, Manush, but a lot of lawyers, I was very unhappy throughout my career. But I'd worked so hard. I'd studied for so many years. I had spent so much money going to school. And obviously, I think by society standards, I was successful. And so I sort of felt like, this is it. I just have to do this forever. And this is what the path I chose. And so I'll make the best of it. And everybody around me was also really unhappy, and everybody around me was also very negative, and it was like just the way that it was. And I know in law we talk a lot about, like, in the legal profession, about like depression and suicide and anxiety and alcohol abuse, but nobody really talks about, like, well, what are you doing? Like, if you're that unhappy, why not leave? And I started making this transition like 5-6 years ago now. When I had my son, I just kind of got to a place where I decided, you know what, I'm going to work for another 40 years, and I don't want to be doing something that makes me unhappy. And so I have to find another way. And, now looking back, it was the best decision I could have made for myself. But in the process, like you were just saying, it's very difficult, extremely difficult choice to make, because you have safety, you have security, you have what you have what everybody, you have the praise of other people. Everyone thinks that you are successful. And so now I have a podcast called Lessons from a Quitter, and I interview all people that have pivoted and gone into new careers and done completely new things. And some people have done it multiple times, and really just to take off the stigma that, like, it's sort of insane to think that you have to pick something when you're 18 or 20 or 22 and then stick with it for the rest of your life. And in times like these, it's even more pronounced. I mean, I actually think, like, I agree with you that I think it's a reset. And I think even before this, like, with the speed up of technology and technological, like, advances, so many industries were being disrupted and were changing. And a lot of people were really fearful that in the next 10 years, like, their industry might be completely gone or might not be needed. And so I think that a lot of times with things like this, or in those kind of times, there's a lot of reflection of, like, okay, if I don't have a job, if I'm not doing this, like, what can I do? What other things that I can be doing? And it might be a time to sit and actually reflect on, like, what you actually want. What is it you want to be doing with your life?
I mean, I'm just like, I feel like I'm an eternal optimist, and I always want to look at the bright side. And it's been tough. I mean, as positive as a person as I am, this has just been so unique, and this whole experience has taken away so many for me personally, the things that I would depend on in order to get through a difficult time period, like the support of my friends, just being able to go out and grab a bite or grab a cup of coffee and have that. And while I love technology and I'm so appreciative that we have that, I miss the human interaction. I miss giving my friends a hug. You know what I mean? And I've said that over and over. But on the other side of all of that is that I have had a chance to reflect and think about, okay, Goli's husband and I share the exact same birthday. I'm just going to give my age away because I really don't care. It's a pandemic. Anything's okay. So it's May 14th, 1980. So when you're reaching around that age of 40, I think you take a moment and you want to just kind of take stock of what you have in your life. Are you happy? Are you not? And I think that this is just a moment where if you are going through that period of job uncertainty, or if you really aren't happy with what you're doing, or if, I don't know, this is a reminder of A, life is really short. B, we really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So like, I know you have had a lot of people reach out to you in terms of asking you, how can I cope with A, the fear, the uncertainty, but also like, what are the opportunities? Like, what would you suggest to someone that's unhappy and sitting through all of this?
Yeah. So here's a couple of things, just a couple of thoughts of going back to what you were saying, like being positive and kind of trying to look at the bright side of things. I think there's like a distinction. I think that, we all intellectually understand that like life is going to have ups and downs. Everything is cyclical, right? And even within a market, even within an economy, we all understand, again, that it's cyclical, and yet when it comes to the hard part, we sort of freeze and like freak out, like this is the end, and it's like, no, it's going to be a rough time after this for the economy. And I in no way want to say that it won't be harder for some people or some people won't go through hard times. Absolutely it will. But there's a reason we have the term blessing in disguise, right? You can't see it when it's happening, but you never, a lot of times I think people look back and think, oh my God, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And having done this podcast now, I've been having, I've had tons of guests. I'll put out a blog post by tomorrow with all the episodes that we've had where we had people who were laid off during the 2008 recession. And that was the catalyst of them going after their dream business. And they've gone on to create the most incredible businesses. Like one of my friends was a lawyer that got laid off. She opened up Homeroom, which is a mac and cheese restaurant in Oakland. It now is 2 locations, 100 employees, and it's her lifelong, passion was cooking. We had another woman, Paula Pants, who quit her job during the recession, couldn't get another job, has now built an empire called Afford Anything. It's like a podcast. It's a show. She makes 7 figures. Does incredible stuff. And looking back, she was like, that was the best thing that happened to me. And so I want people to have a little bit of perspective. I know in no way I'm going to say like, everything's going to be fine. You're not going to go through any hard times. Of course not. Like we all are probably going to go through really hard times. But when you look at it as like a long game, like, okay, maybe the next year, maybe the next 2 years, maybe the next couple of years, they're going to be a trying time, but that is what builds you up. That is what lets you take time to reflect and think like, okay, if there is no certainty, which is another thing we talk about a lot on this podcast, is that, a lot of times we stick with these jobs we hate because we think they're safe. And then when something like this happens, we realize there is there's no such thing as safety or certainty.
No, vulnerability has been the number one emotion I've felt, and I've built my life on putting myself in a position where I'm not vulnerable. The people I love aren't vulnerable. I'm going to protect you. And I'm like, whoa, I have no control at all over any of it.
None. And that's the thing is, it's so funny. I've had so many podcast guests that were like, and it wasn't during the recession, but they were like 65 and they got laid off and they didn't have enough to retire yet. And it's like, who's going to hire me now? And it really brought about a very difficult moment in their life of like, what do I do now? And even then, like going on to start a business at 65, because we have all these preconceived notions of like, I'm too late. I'm too old to do this. I'm too whatever. And I think a lot of times with this kind of stuff, it's a shakeup to realize like, hey, if there is no safety, if there is no certainty, if I'm going to get kicked out, why not actually go after the thing I want? Why not figure out like what it is that I truly want to be doing in my life and like focus on that? And I really hope that a lot of people get that out of this. Like I don't in any way want to minimize the fact that it is going to be hard and that you might have to downsize. You might have to go through financial struggles. You might have to do, those things are a part of recessions. But again, that's going to happen. It'll happen again after this one. In about 10 years, we'll have another recession, And so it's like once you can kind of accept that, it makes it easier to be like, okay, this is happening. Now what? What do I do?
So going first, can you remind us again, because these are great podcasts that I would love to listen to. So I know that everyone else that's
Yeah,
listening is, because this is what you need to
sure.
hear. It's just a little bit. So where can they go to hear this again, just so that people are joining on and off and whatnot? So,
Yes. So just go to
okay.
lessonsfromaquitter.com. On my blog, I'll have a list of all of the podcasts where we talk to people that got laid off in the
Perfect.
2008 recession.
So let's say we are dealing with the uncertainty and we're kind of overcome it, and now we're getting the courage to think about what may be, what we could
Yeah.
do, what we could pursue. What do you recommend? Like, how do you go from, because I don't know, I personally, I'm very honest on these things, because I'm like, what's the point of this if I'm going to pretend like everything is perfect? I got to tell you, I've been a little bit of like a little bit touch and go mess recently when it's all of this. I feel like I have a lot in my mind. I have a lot of
Yeah.
ideas. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of creative things, but somehow it gets lost between what I want to do, and then I get overwhelmed, and then I end up not doing as much.
Yeah.
So like, how do you
Yeah.
recommend taking it to the point of, hey, you know what? I am that person who's loved to cook all my life, and maybe there's something I can do. What do you recommend going
Yeah.
from the thoughts in your head to action?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's not just you, it's all of us. And here's the thing, I think a lot of it is becoming self-aware. And what happens is there's two problems. One is that we think there's a right decision. So we keep trying to wait for like, what's the right next choice, right? As opposed to, okay, like I'm a human being that I want to experiment. Let me try something, right? We get so attached to the outcome of something that we don't even start, because especially people that have been successful before in their careers, have gone the traditional path. We have been taught perfectionism. We have been taught to worry about what everybody thinks about us. We've been taught. And so all of these fears kind of keep us stuck. And so we keep thinking about it. We keep ruminating, but we don't ever take action, because it's like, well, do I actually like cooking enough to do it for a career? Maybe I should look at this. Maybe I should do this other thing. And the one piece of advice I will give you is that you will never, ever, ever think your way to the end. Like, you will never create a plan. You know, I think somebody, I don't know, it was Steve Jobs or somebody had said a quote that like, if you waited for all the lights to turn green before you left to go to work, like you would never leave, right? It's like there's never going to be like a clear path where you're just going to leave and you're going to go and you're going to, you know, go on to your life. So honestly, if you hear nothing else, I want you to hear that clarity comes from action. It comes from doing things. It comes from saying like, okay, I like cooking, so I'm going to allow myself to maybe just start a cooking Instagram or whatever, or like start doing it for my friends and family, start doing it on the side to see if I like it. Maybe I'm going to go to a farmer's market and see if anybody likes these cookies I make, whatever it is. And as you start doing it, you start seeing like, well, I don't actually like it that much, or, oh, I really like this aspect of it, right? But if you're only sitting and trying to think of a plan and try to think of like the perfect plan where you'll never fail, because like that has ever like, when has anybody started something and then they've been like, oh, I've never had a problem, I've never failed at anything, you know? It's like, it doesn't happen. So I think like if you can get yourself to a place where you realize, okay, I'm at the place now that I want to try some of these things, I want you to realize that there's no right answer. So you have to start getting really in tune with your own self, and like not what everybody else wants from you, not what society thinks you should do, not what's like, you know, we've told ourselves like this isn't like would never be a career. And now we see with the internet that people are making money doing all kinds of things. So I want you to put all that stuff aside and really hone in on like, what lights me up? What are things that I love doing? And how can I start looking at like what maybe that could possibly turn into a career? Maybe something around that can turn into a career, and then just start doing. Even if it's a small step, no one is saying you have to quit your job or you have to like, you know, uproot your whole life. On nights, on the weekends, start like picking up a hobby around the thing that you want to do, and that will give you so much more clarity than trying to like create some kind of plan that's gonna work.
Especially, I feel like right now, it's just, for me, like one of the ways I've managed to kind of get grounded and anchor back down with all of this, the uncertainty that's just whirling around up here, is
Yeah.
finding something that makes me happy. You know, finding something that like makes me feel good. Even like this, like these cocktails in quarantine,
Yeah.
had no idea what I've never done anything like this before, but
Yeah.
I'm a people person. I have this amazing network of beautiful, amazing people like yourself who are so talented and gifted. And I'm like, why not? You know what I mean? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, whatever. Whoever doesn't like it can just not watch. I mean, I'm not, don't you dare go on,
Absolutely.
but you know, and so, but it makes me happy. It makes me feel like at
Totally.
least I'm doing something good for other people, and that makes me happy. And so sometimes it doesn't have to be this, I don't know. I just feel like this
Yeah.
is the time to find that thing that makes you feel like
Absolutely.
good inside and feel, as my trainer always says, what fills your cup. You need to take that moment
Yes.
and do that, and that
Well,
in that you find what you're passionate about.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that what we all tend to miss, like we get so caught up in the hustle and we get so caught up in life and we have so caught up in like becoming successful or being this thing that it's like when you take a step back, if somebody asked you like, what do you want your life to be? You know, everybody would want like answer that you want it to be full and you want it to be joyful and you want it to be adventurous and you want it to be happy and you want to have all these things, right? A lot of that stuff is not even about your career, right? So it's like, but we get so caught up in our career and all the responsibilities and all the things we have to do that we put aside everything that like truly brings us a little bit of joy, right? We stop being curious, we stop letting ourselves experiment, we stop letting ourselves just try things for the heck of trying it because we're so afraid like, what if I do this and people think that I'm weird, that I'm not going to do it? And it's like, well, at the end of that life, you're going to look back and think, oh, I didn't try anything because I just didn't want anyone to say anything, you know, as opposed to like, okay, I let myself, yeah, I tried 10 things and 8 of them didn't work, but 2 of them were incredible and they brought so much passion to my life and they lit me up and, you know, they gave me all these hobbies and like, that is what you're ultimately after. So start incorporating that in your life, even if it's not a career change, you know, and I guarantee you that it will lead to what like your career should be.
It's so funny you say that, your own North Star, because I do think that so much of the answers that we're looking for are inside of us. You know what I mean? And it's just, we have to kind of let ourselves feel it. We're so in our own brains and head all the time. But I
Yeah.
feel like when something like this
Yeah.
happens, we kind of fall back into our natural element. It's like, okay, well, which people, for
Absolutely.
whatever reason, they felt like toilet paper was necessary for survival. So that was something they went after, but it's like survival mode. But with that comes tapping back into what's inside and what feels right. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in the process myself of just kind of reevaluating whether it's relationships and people and things I did or how I spent my time. And that's what I'm saying is like, if you're looking for a silver lining, if you're looking for something positive, these are the things you can find in this otherwise just
Yeah.
very, very horrible,
Absolutely.
difficult, and highly stressful situation.
Absolutely. And I'll give you guys 2 book recommendations that I think every human being should just read. I think it's just, even if it's not for, even if you don't want to change your career, Martha Beck's Finding Your Own North Star is an incredible book. And same with Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. I mean, it's literally, I feel like in those 2 books, they have like the answer to life. And so you should read those books. But bringing it back to careers, I'm not saying that, again, like, it's a really hard time for all of us. Like you were saying too, I mean, I was joking with my cousin about how like, is it normal to feel all of the emotions every single day? You know, I feel like it's like just like a huge roller coaster, right? And it's like,
or just be emotional. I was never a crier.
Yeah.
I see somebody doing something nice, I'm bawling. If someone says something nasty, I'm bawling. If someone just whatever, I'm like, just
Yeah.
no, it's like, what the heck is happening?
I think all of that is normal and like giving ourselves like being gentle with ourselves and understanding it's normal. But I do want, again, like going back to the career thing, what I want people to understand is that yes, it might be hard. Yes, there's times to panic. And I was just saying, you know, how people are listening later, like that we had all these people that got laid off and it turned into something good. I just want people to realize that in a recession too, every recession leads to unbelievable amounts of innovation and new businesses because there's things to disrupt, right? Like when out of the 2008 recession came Airbnb and Uber and Groupon and all these huge, like, you know, and those are just like the bigger companies, obviously tons and tons of small ones. And think about from Airbnb, how many people created short-term rental businesses, and from, you know, there's all these things that people ended up creating their own entrepreneurial journeys from. And so I think that when you can get a little bit out of panic, like a lot of times when you're in this frenetic energy of like, oh, I gotta figure it out, I'm gonna die, everything is gonna, you know, and it's like you can calm yourself down and maybe have a little bit more of just like a wherewithal of like, okay, this is what's happening. What do I do now? What can I do? What am I interested in? What gaps in the market do I see? What are, like right now, you know, obviously there's a lot in the politics, there's a lot in people being fed up with like different ways corporations are doing things. People are much more into self-care. People are really like around in community. There's so much opportunity. In my community, I have a lot of people that are career changers, and there's a lot of people that were starting, like, let's say, you know, I was just talking to a lady that had started like a home, like interior decorating business. And I'm like, this is perfect. Everybody right now is trying to figure out, how do I make my home more zen? I'm home all the time. Like, you can start putting out tutorials of like how to just like declutter your house. You're not as chaotic. That is your zen place or whatever it is, right? And so what I say is that in that kind of an example is that, yes, you might have to pivot. Yes, it may not be exactly, but there is so much opportunity for innovation. There's so much opportunity for like what was lacking, what is the new change in our, you know, everybody, like you were saying, is now being really retrospective and like introspective, and like people want to know like how they're, what opportunity does that provide? What do people want as they're going forward? So I think like if you can start seeing that there is opportunity around, and that there are, and that you are perfectly capable, just like everybody, of doing something with it, it can feel more empowering, and you can start like actually looking at what you can do.
So, but let's cheers to you first. Can you
cheers
with me, Goli? Yeah, there you go. I'm like, there's a delay, but I'm drinking anyway. I'm drinking now. I'm drinking after the delay.
I love it.
But one thing I have found helpful, and it's kind of like lent itself to ideas and creativity, which maybe other people want to look into, because I was having a really hard time. I know everyone talks about routines, and I was like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But I was kind of having a hard time balancing everything because, well, I have my own business, and so you never get any time off. But also,
right,
you know, you're at home, so there's this part of you, especially if you're type A like me, where you just feel guilty. And I'm like, well, no, if someone wants to talk, I need to answer this email right now. If this person wants this call, I need to get on it. I'm home. I have nothing to do. It's almost like I have to make up for that. And that was really not good for me, because in my previous life, a couple months ago, I would get up in the morning early and I would go to the gym, and I would put my phone away. I wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't think about it. I would have my workout. I'd set my mind straight, and then I would deal with everything else that needed to be dealt with. Whereas now I wake up, and from the moment I look at my phone, it doesn't really matter what I had planned. And somehow the things I had planned for myself seem less important, until I was told to take a moment and like carve out time for me, and not allow, like, that's as important as an appointment. And one of the parts was kind of journaling, because all these ideas were coming to me, all these emotions, all of these things. And I was really having a hard time dealing with everything, processing it, figuring it out, and kind of being able to differentiate between the helpful ideas and thoughts versus the sabotaging ones, you know? Right. And that writing things down or documenting things has been helpful for me in terms of sorting. Like, what do you recommend in that way? Can that help? Like journaling, 100%. Notes, outline, whatever.
100%. I think journaling, writing is, everybody should do it, because here's the thing. We have 60,000 thoughts a day, and our brain doesn't understand, like most of our thoughts are in our subconscious, and so they're just repeating over and over. And you know, anybody that's tried to meditate understands like how many thoughts are just bombarding you at all times. And then right now, especially when something, you know, our brains are evolved to try to seek certainty. Like, we hate uncertainty. So when there is uncertainty, you know, that's why everybody's brain is like just misfiring. It's just like, like chaos, you know, I don't know what's happening. And so a lot of times through journaling, it's so funny when you say this, because like you start realizing you didn't know you were having those thoughts. And it just starts, the more you let yourself keep writing, the more things that like you didn't realize were in there start coming out. And I think so much of that is really important to process in order to see like, oh my God, I'm really worried about this thing. I didn't even understand. Like, I had a anxious feeling, but I had no idea why I was feeling anxious. And it's like, oh, it's because these thoughts are in my head that I'm not even aware of. So I absolutely agree. I think that like self-care and mental health right now are like the most important thing. And so you absolutely have to carve time out. And I think that writing things down, I also think even in trying to figure out what you want to do it on paper. Write down a list of all of the strengths that you have. Write down a list of everything that you would possibly be interested in. Write down the list of all of the skills or, you know, careers that, because a lot of times you think that you can do it in your head, but it's once you start writing, because when you're doing it in your head, you're thinking of a couple of things. And then as you start brainstorming, you're like, oh my God, there's so many more choices than I realized I had, you know? And so it lets you elaborate. It lets you like get things focused instead of just having the millions of things that we all have going on all the time.
Well, thank you so much, honestly, for talking these things through, because it's just, I don't know, it's very, very helpful, and I'm hoping everyone else who's been coming in on and off and who will see this will find it as helpful, which I know that they will. And I know that you have two beautiful children at home and an amazing husband who's one of my dearest friends as well. So I appreciate the fact that amidst all of this madness, you take the time to come and talk to us. And I got to tell you, we have the best neighbor upstairs. She is, I mean, I don't know how old she is. Well, actually, I do know. She's probably in her early 70s. But every Friday night, she, like, around this time, blasts Persian music. She's Iranian American, blasts Persian music. And I can hear her dancing. And I feel like we all need a little bit of that in our lives.
Yes.
Like, we need that. Yes. Have a drink, put some music on, dance, and let yourself check out and forget it, you know? But
absolutely. I 100% agree. I 100%
so
agree.
Tell us one last thing that we can go, and then we're gonna go start our dance party. I gotta go start my dance party with her because I can't be out dance party.
Okay, my one last thing, always, 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 is just be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. We are so hard on ourselves. We are so mean to ourselves. We're our biggest worst critic. We're constantly thinking all the shoulds and looking at everything. I should have done this, especially in this time. Anything you're doing, getting up and putting on clothes and making yourself food is an accomplishment. Like, just be kind to yourself and you will get through this and you can get back to life as normal in no time.
Thank you, Aziza. I know I needed to hear that. So thank you. Thank you for the reminder. And I hope you're being kind to yourself too. And cheers.
I am.
And
cheers.
Yes.